Today on Business Journey Unlocked, I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm joined today by Dustin Dobbyn, founder of Tacton One, co-owner of Child Rescue, and podcast host of Tacton One podcast. With over 20 years of combined military, law enforcement, and private security experience, Dustin brings expertise across security operations and just overall business stuff that you really need to adapt into if you want to grow a scalable and disciplined business. Dustin, I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. I'll turn it over to you so you can explain yourself far better than I ever could.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited as well. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I did a total of 8 years, but with some overlap. I got out and immediately jumped into law enforcement. I started working in the Department of Corrections, like most do, before I went to the street, went to the police academy, and um, did that for about 8 years as well before I had some struggles in law enforcement with my personal life and with the job, and then was introduced to the private security contracting world. Worked that for a few years, and then decided that I wanted to elevate the standards a little bit and create something that was going to shock the security industry and open my own company. So that's where we're at now with Tacon One.
It's awesome. And again, it's a really good honor to have you here. So regarding your company, what's the core operational philosophy you have that you instill not only with yourself but with the team?
So my biggest thing, man, is that I've noticed, throughout my entire life, if you go back to even high school, your football team or your track team, your wrestling team or whatever, if you truly operate and function like a team, you're gonna win, right? Those are the people who win. Those are the people who dominate. The ones that they've got the support system on each other. They push each other. They make each other better, right? So, same with military. You go into specialized units, with the exception of just the indoctrination or the testing standards. What makes special forces or elite units in the military is that team aspect. Same with law enforcement, right? You want to get a group of guys who are high functioning, high performing. You put them on together in a SWAT team. Same thing. So I had been through all of these aspects through military, law enforcement, all of it. I was with Fast Company, so a fast team, and then I was with a specialized team in Afghanistan, and then on the SWAT team through law enforcement. Um, and what I saw was in the security industry, like that wasn't an aspect. Like people were just getting warm bodies, putting a uniform on them, giving them just enough training to get them certified or qualified to stand that post, and then they were putting them on that post without really taking care of them. My whole thing with Tack on One is I want to get a group of together, a team. I want to treat them well. I want to train them well, and I want to pay them well, so we don't have the problems that other companies have, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the whole thing is like we're a team. During our interview process, we explain that this isn't your typical company. We don't want people who just want to come here and make a paycheck and go home. That's fine. That's what work is. But, we want team players. We want people who are supportive. We want people who want to train, who want to seek self improvement and do better. Um, because we want to help you grow. We want to help you personally and professionally grow yourself because as a team, like it just makes the company better. I don't want people who, dread coming to work every day. So, I'm always checking in and our management staff is always checking in to make sure everybody's happy, everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, but more importantly, like they're not getting burned out.
Uh-huh.
They're high performance standards or where they should be. Um, and we take care of them. That's the main thing. So what we do is we show up, we provide a better service than what the client expects, and we continue to grow as a team and we take everything head on. All of our teammates they're known, we know who they are. We check in on them, like on the personal side, on the business side, and their voice is included when it comes to decisions with the company because we are a team. And we're at the point where my role has shifted. I started this company with nothing, but now it's to the point where I'm nothing without my team. If those guys aren't out there performing, then we don't have a company. So, I make sure that we take really good care of them. That's really the bottom line.
Depending on how big the company gets, they sometimes forget that there's without these people, without the people under you, you're nothing without them. Absolutely nothing without them. And it just goes to show how much impactful you have to be, not only as I would say a friend with them because you go on a personal level, but also as the team lead, as the leader, as the owner. Like you have to make sure everybody's not burned out, everybody's working. Because if they're burned out, what's going to happen? Their work's going to go to shit, right? And it just there's so many factors at play that you really have to understand them in just an individual level, but also as a team. Like, this person works good here, this person doesn't work good here. So, okay, let's dial back that a little bit and just going from there. It's everything, it's like chess, right? You figure out
Hmm.
where it's good to place this person and just go on from there. So we briefly mentioned before starting this podcast that you had other businesses prior. Now, now going on this business, what would be the biggest strategy for the audience to listen to? What would be the biggest strategy that you had in going into this business that you didn't have necessarily with the other businesses that you tried starting up?
Yeah. So the difference is mission accomplishment. So, with my other businesses, my first one, absolute failure because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. That was on me, my fault. I didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. It was more of like a side hobby type thing. And I wasn't real serious about it. So then obviously if you're not serious about it, then it's not going to work out. So, my second business was again, it was just for me. It wasn't a failure. It just, I evolved it into and rolled it into what we have now. But when I started Tack on One, it was just I was working in the security industry and in the tactical training industry within the state. I was at high level, director, manager levels. And what I saw was terrible leadership. I saw terrible performance and I was embarrassed. I didn't think the clients deserved to be treated like that. They pay good money for a service and these people were just finding ways to cut corners, and it wasn't fair to the client. So when I officially formed Tack on One, it was just going to be the training side of things. So I'd been an instructor in the Marine Corps. I'd been an instructor all through law enforcement. I taught at the police academy, and I used a lot of that to translate into the security world. And that's how it first started. So I wanted to provide good training to the security companies to try and help them to better their contracts, to better their performance. Um, and what happened was, some of our clients saw that, they experienced it, and they were just like, "Well, I I just want to hire you. Let's hire your company." And it just evolved from there. So, and the philosophy is the same. We go out there. I hire primarily former military, former law enforcement veterans, or guys who have like extensive high risk security experience, just because I know how I can talk to them, right? I spent my entire adult life in that realm, in the tactical realm, to where, I know what it takes to motivate those kind of people. They aren't motivated by the average things that most people are, the bonuses, the typical employee stuff. They're not motivated by that. They're motivated by having a brotherhood, a sisterhood, where if they need to call off, they know that they can call. They're not going to get punished for it, and somebody else is going to jump in and take their shift just to help them out, right? We had a guy who he ended up getting cancer. And the first thing we were all like, oh my gosh, well, you go home, you take care of yourself and your family. You obviously you're going to have a job when you come back, but we also figured out ways to take care of them during that time. Um, we had another guy who he had just started with us, and it was his first shift, and he was really struggling financially. And he showed up and he shared that with the trainer who was there, and the trainer was like, "What do you mean you don't have any gas? You might not be able to make it home." Like, gave him some money. It was like, "No, man, we're a family here. This isn't a job. You know, this is a family where you get the opportunity to put in some hours and make a paycheck." And that to me, that's what it's all about, man. Like, yes, it's a company. At the end of the day, we have the structure. It's a business. Um, we have in management and C-suite up, we have deliverables that are required for us to continue the business. But at the end of the day, we're a family, and we're always checking in on each other, taking care of each other. You know, the team aspect is what makes us successful.
I love that. I love just everything you just said, and it really just really proves that how you interact and how you go deeper on a personal level with your team really excels not only the team as a whole, but how you execute the client's strategy as well.
In the security industry too, it can be a little hairy. Clients, most clients, they want to pay. They want special operators who are special forces guys and can you know, perform at this elite level, but they only want to pay $15 an hour. We have those honest and crucial conversations with the client. And do we outbid other companies? Of course, it happens. But where you're really getting the best with us is like the performance. And like what you're paying for is you're going to get to the fullest extent to the best of our ability. And, the clients, yes, they're a part of the team, they're a part of the family, we treat them like that. We embed ourselves in their companies and with the client, so they're comfortable with us. We give them consistency, and, they really appreciate that, but we also we've had tough points where we would get a complaint about one of our teammates, and, their quick reaction is, "We want him removed from our site, we don't want him here." Well, that's not how it works. Like this is our company, our team. We're going to investigate it, and if he's in the wrong, absolutely. Like we'll absolutely remove him from your site and meet your wishes. That's no problem. But what happens is we do a full investigation. We present that to the client, and the client goes, "Oh, it wasn't what I was told. We're sorry." Um, and the team appreciates that because other companies, they're just quick, like, "Oh, you messed up. This is your fault. You're fired. Get out of here." Right. Whereas we know our people so well, we know our team that if we get a complaint, we really, we look into it. Has there been valid complaints? Of course. Like this is an industry that's very um, tough. It's very rigid, it's rough around the edges, right? Like, you deal with some stuff. You deal with all the stuff that nobody wants to deal with. That's what security is. And, you know, it wears on people. And what we do is when we recognize that people are struggling in a site, we rotate them through, we give them a break, we offer them time off. It's again, if you don't take care of your people, they're not going to take care of you. And if you do take care of your people, they're going to show up and they're going to show up better than any other company. So invest in your people and invest in yourself is like the best business advice I can give, especially in this industry.
I love the saying that people expect champagne, but they want to pay for beer.
Yeah,
That really,
that's so
really
true.
so true. And it's a shame, but people have to understand. You have those open and transparent conversations. Like, this is why we're this price because of X amount of years this guy has. It's probably as as 20 years, right? And you have 20 years combined, and you're the
Yeah,
owner. I can't even imagine how much years in total your whole team has.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, we have guys who, former special forces guys.
That's
They
awesome.
worked federal law enforcement. We have law enforcement guys. You name it, man. We have medics. We have all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And that's one of the things that, we push so hard is it, everybody has all these skill sets and these instructorships that they can bring to the team. So, we offer free training. So we have guys who are TCCC certified and they want to host a training to get everybody TCCC certified, right? Um, and we do that. We all share what we know and we share our experience because it just makes the team better, right? Um, and that's other companies are going to send you to trainings or they're going to make you pay for it. And we don't do that. If you're part of the team, you're a part of the team. And the way we operate and function as a team is we all work together. We all help each other grow. So, um, that's another aspect that, a lot of companies, they'll incentivize sending you to a school or a training or, something like that. Whereas we're like, hey, find a location, let's set up a class and let's do it together. If you can make it, great. If you can't, catch the next one. So, um, that really helps out too.
Find the biggest advantage on your perspective is that you understand your colleagues. You understand because they're former military, you're former military. So as you mentioned before, people in that aspect they're not incentivized by the bonuses. That's not how it
Mhm,
works. They're more incentivized by the brotherhood, the sisterhood, and especially nowadays with everything going on in other security companies, there's not a lot of that.
mhm.
It's all about they think for themselves. And but when shit hits the fan and they're the ones there, they're like, "Where's my backup? Who's relieving me?" But when you were
Yeah.
like that last week when you didn't show up, it just there's no accountability. There's no dedication, as you mentioned with the brotherhood or sisterhood. There's nothing like that. And I do love that approach you have in your company. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, my team would love bonuses and extra money, right? Like, but, that's not their drive, their focus, right? We keep things pretty competitive because we're all type A personalities, so we're all competitive by nature. So, we have little incentives, and monthly we pick a winner, and that winner gets a gift up to a certain amount. And we keep it fun too, and we keep them engaged with each other. Whereas, I mean, these people are miles away from each other, sometimes states away from each other, but we're all engaged in a group chat, in a conversation, several group chats, um, in a conversation to where everybody gets to know everybody, right? And then when we do host these trainings, and everybody, comes to one location, they're like, "Oh, it's so nice to finally meet you," and it's just cool to see that, I'm creating something that's not just a business, right? I love hearing when people come up to me and tell me, I love coming to work. Like, I love, I may not love the site or the client, but I love the team and I love what we do. So, that's very rewarding to hear because we've all had jobs where we hated it. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to say employer, but the team leader who everybody hates and everybody doesn't want to come work for because it just sucks. And I do everything I can to make sure that it's not that way. The job is not easy. Security is not easy. It's just about, like you said, understanding your team down to each and every single teammate. And their strengths, their weaknesses, where to put them strategically, what they're good at, what they're not good at, where we can improve. And that's very important. You got to know your team.
I love the building the sense of community. Again, that's just a very huge thing that I think some employers don't truly get or truly understand because they're just more caring about the numbers, the profitability aspect. Well, even though profit is a huge thing, as we're going on with this, team values is probably the most important thing because that
Yeah.
correlates to all different facets of the business.
Yeah. So what I'm finding out with this company and this team is if you're successful in everything else, the profit, the money is just a byproduct. That's your marker of success. But, um, you know, I have not, still to this day, personally, have not taken a single paycheck from the company. So, I do executive protection and stuff for other companies. And, that's what I use to pay my bills and my family's bills and, put food on the table. Because I want my team to have everything that they need to perform, right? So all of that money I reinvest into the company. I'm buying them gear, I'm buying certain things or paying for certifications and stuff that just helps the team grow. Um, one day I may take a paycheck, I may not. I don't know. Um, I just again, it's that servant type, the servant leadership style is, it's really proven to work with this team. And, my role as the CEO and the president of the company is to support them and make sure that they have everything to do their job. And then it's also to go out and find new work for them to do, right? So, and again, they support me in that, and I support them in what they're doing. We all have a specific role. Every single teammate has a specific role, and we all work together as the same team for the same dream.
Precisely. And I love that strategy that you use, that you don't take a paycheck. Some people might say that's counterintuitive, but you're investing back into the company, so it's not really counterintuitive. You're trying to do everything in your possible control to grow and expand the business, and that comes down to the gear, the the workflow, the scheduling, like every dollar counts growing the business.
The last thing I ever want to do is to have a conversation with a client and them say, "Do you have this or the ability to do this?" And I have that financial constraint that prevents me from having what the client wants, right? I'm I love that when clients say, "Can you do this?" or "Do you have this piece of equipment or whatever to do this?" And I say, "Yes," or "No, but I'll buy one right now." It just gives the client the feeling of, "We're going to personalize this experience and this service for you." And you know, it, it's difficult. There's in the the early years of this business, um, we had to make it work. And still now, I mean, things are much, much better off. But, uh, I like there to be cushion. I don't ever, our teammates get paid weekly. I don't ever want to have to tell them, like, oh, we got to wait for a client to pay us. Or, that's not their role. Their role is to do the job and get paid and build the team at their level. And my role is to make sure that they're paid and they're supported and they're treated well. That's the main thing.
Based on everything that's been happening in just not only country but in the world, what major shifts or trends are you personally seeing in private security and just tactical training right now? And how has that shaped your strategy in TACON 1?
That's a great question. So, I mean, obviously, the need for security isn't slowing down. So, if you look and you just kind of forecast how everything's going to play out, since 2020, we saw a lot of the defund the police and a lot less support for law enforcement. And, a lot more people are much more willing to deal with private security than they are law enforcement, just because of, and don't get me wrong, I fully 100% support law enforcement. I was a cop for 8 years, but, the trust has been diminished by all the stuff that they've seen on the news and, those unfortunately those bad apples within the industry of law enforcement. So a lot of people have turned to private security as kind of that cushion because, they're able to offer not as much as far as law enforcement goes in a service, but enough to where they're comfortable, right? Um, a lot of the stuff, a lot of law enforcement agencies have been short staffed since all that stuff has been going on, and it prevents them from being able to respond to certain types of calls that are low priority and things like that. Whereas if you hire a private security company, they can secure your parking garage or whatever, right? So the need is there, and it's going to continue to expand. And more recently, we've seen the you know attacks on CEOs, and with the murder that happened in New York with the United Healthcare CEO. we're seeing a lot more of the executive protection type stuff or the request for that. And there's a lot of guys in the industry, a lot of big players in the industry who say that military and law enforcement doesn't translate into the role of an executive protection or close protection agent. And I, I think a lot of people get that wrong. Um, yes, it doesn't directly translate. More training needs to happen. You need to go through specialized school. You need to understand the job of executive protection. There are some very major differences that a lot of military and law enforcement guys are used to, whereas it just doesn't work in the executive protection realm. But I primarily hire military veterans, law enforcement veterans, because it tells me a couple things is they can push through tough situations, right? Even if they just graduated boot camp is not easy. So that tells me that they can go through some training or some very tough environments and persevere through that. Same with law enforcement. Those guys, they respond to calls that are very uncertain and extremely dangerous. So to me, those are the type of guys that they've got a foundation that we can build on and add that executive protection or close protection layer to. Um, and then, as far as strategy goes, I utilize that, right? Like, I've been to Afghanistan, I was in the infantry. I was with a fleet anti-terrorism security team, so I learned a lot of skills on that end as far as like securing sites and stuff, which has helped me tremendously in this business and this industry. And then, I transitioned right into law enforcement where, I learned all those skills as well. I was on the SWAT team where, we would have snipers in place and stuff like that. So in the security world, how I've kind of strategically developed that is, this is the industry standard and for the military, this is the industry standard for law enforcement, and this is the industry standard for security. I blended all of those together. So, when we go in and do an advance and stuff, we're looking for, okay, if I was a sniper, where would I be? And we do counter sniper surveillance. We do all of it. We incorporate all of that stuff that, if I was planning a complex raid on a drug cartel or something, I would do the same thing. So, that's proprietary to us is, I've meshed all that together to make sure that the client is 100% covered and 100% safe. So, and even down to site security, a lot of clients are amazed because before we even step foot on that site, I'm spending a significant amount of time giving them intelligence and all kinds of things about the location that they probably didn't even know, even though they've been there for years. So, um, that's another aspect that we do is the clients. There's no pressure. We have enough clients. We make enough money. Everything is great. So, if a client doesn't like what we have to offer, I encourage them to go shop around and look for something else, right? Um, but most of them are 100% amazed with how much I dump into it or we dump into it as a team before we even set foot on the site or, sign a contract. So, um, a lot of people have reached out and I've just kind of helped them out, didn't charge them anything just because, I felt like they needed it and, they really appreciate that kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to become a billionaire or anything like that. I want to solve the problem and I want to make clients happy. I hate hearing that residents of a multifamily are scared to take their trash out because of the crime in the area and they don't feel safe where they live. And I don't ever want people to live like that. So we try to go above and beyond for people. Our service is providing service to people and you know, I don't like I said, I don't like to see people struggle or to feel unsafe anywhere. So we try to provide the best solution possible with, meeting their budget.
That's the worst thing to see, just when people are in struggle. It's kind of concerning that you mentioned briefly before that people don't see, I don't want to say the value, but you mentioned that they don't like to, like military and law enforcement, that doesn't roll over into the executive protection. Like if it were me, for example, And if I wanted to hire somebody who was either picked up off the street, had maybe about a year or two of private security, executive protection, or this guy who's done 8 years in law enforcement, 10 years in the military, for example, like I'd rather pick option B. I don't understand that thought process. I don't know if it's the location where you're at, but for me that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So it comes down to like the tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? So a lot of military and law enforcement guys are real aggressive, whereas the
Mhm.
executive protection roles, you got to be, it's primarily customer service, right? Um, you got to treat them really well and, bend over backwards. You're being embedded into their team and being one of their people, right? But also looking over them to make sure that they're safe. So a lot of guys, like I said, a lot of military and law enforcement guys are real rough around the edges. They bark orders. They're very over the top. And those are just the minor changes that you have to instill in them, right? Hey, the role changes. You don't want to look like a military or law enforcement guy. You want to blend in. Um, the role of, if a threat presents itself in executive protection, whereas military and law enforcement are used to running towards the threat and, addressing the threat. Whereas in executive protection, our goal is to get the client off the X and get them out of there safely before they even encounter that threat, right? So there's just, again, it's just little things that you have to change. You got to tweak a little things, but I agree. In my mind, I would much rather have a guy who knows what taking sniper fire feels like, or when a threat does prevent itself or present itself. This guy is going to react. He's not going to freeze. He's going to know exactly what to do and be able to handle himself under pressure.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's my philosophy on it, and that's my understanding. So when I hire primarily former military, former law enforcement, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for guys who have been there, been through some tough experiences. I know they can handle it, and then we're going to train them and make them even better
Mhm.
before we send them out to the client anyway. So, maybe it's an investment thing. A lot of companies, they don't want to invest in former military, former law enforcement guys to train the bad habits, or the not bad habits, but the differences in strategies, or you know, techniques and standard operating procedures. It's just something you got to train. You should always be training, always improving yourself and improving your team.
Investments is a big thing. I do agree on that, but also might be from the fact that now I don't know how other private security companies are in your area, but it might revolve around the fact that maybe some of them, most of them don't hire the same experience level that you hire in your colleagues. That might be a reason why. That might not be a reason why. I'm assuming now.
Yeah. Well, on the business side, a lot of military veterans or law enforcement guys who get out, they struggle with jobs because they're used to a certain standard, and they're used to
Right.
being talked to a certain way and being able to talk to other people a certain way. So, we have guys who, they spent pretty much their whole lives in the military or in this industry, and we have to tell them like, hey man, you gotta dial it back a little bit. Remember, we're not talking to a bunch of recruits in the academy or recruits in boot camp. And they correct themselves, or they're very mission driven. So you got to make the mission clear. And, to them, mission accomplishment is the number one priority. So you got to make it clear and be very clear and very detailed in your expectations and standards. And I think you'll find a lot of military veterans, law enforcement veterans, they like to have pretty strict standards. That's just the world that they're comfortable in.
100%. So as TACON 1 grows, obviously you're shifting your time from on the field to more back end office work. Based on that, what's in your operational system right now? What's something that's mostly time consuming, repetitive, but necessary work in order to achieve the scalability and just the proper workflow of your business?
Yeah, so I mean, I still get out there and I work shifts. I do site checks, not to check in and like micromanage. My site checks are more to make sure the client knows that, we're available at all times. They can reach us. They can, if there's an issue, they know they have a direct line to us, or if they have additional requests, they have a direct line to us. And I do go out, I work shifts just to, again, I want to see for myself some of the struggles that they're facing on these clients. Eh, or if there's an open shift because everybody's busy or something, I have no problem jumping in and doing it. In fact, those are days where I kind of get a break and I enjoy it. It's nice. But, as far as the role that I'm in now and how it's kind of evolved and the most time consuming stuff is, um, clients are very cautious. People are very cautious nowadays, especially if they've had a really bad experience with a security company before. Uh, Getting the warm and fuzzy feeling about another security company coming in is difficult. I totally understand where they're coming from. Some of the horror stories I've heard from other security companies providing a service to a client, I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff. At the end of the day, I take that time and I really establish a good rapport and relationship with the clients before we even talk about, rolling into the contract and the insurance and all the stuff that comes with, um, you know, getting them onboarded. But uh, yeah, that's probably the most time consuming is just the meetings, you know, eh, all of our clients, they want to check in, they want to know how things are going, vice versa. We want to check in with them. We want to know how things are going with our guards. Um, So yeah, probably just meetings and all of the not so fun business stuff. I would say is the most consuming.
It's natural too, going on how people may not be a little comfortable in the beginning, but as they get to know you, as they get to know your operation and they see your true values, then they'll turn over. It's just the initial push, the initial nudge is what really makes or break having you on your team, right?
Yeah, yeah. Security is it's a difficult thing to sell to because a lot of people don't think they need it until it's too late, right? Or it's hard to sell because it's an out of pocket expense in many ways. A lot of clients, companies, whatever, they see it as a burden, another bill that they have to pay for, that doesn't benefit their business really. So, which we take the time to explain to them how that's false, right? It may seem that way, but there's other ways to get it, tax benefits and all kinds of stuff to get it covered. But um, also, it's we give them examples of how one security incident can really it can put a company under, and we make sure that we give them that warm and fuzzy feeling. We have extremely high coverage on our insurance, and we all of our ducks are in a row, and we undersell and you know over overproduce when it comes to our quality. So that's the main thing is once the contract's signed and once we have our team on the ground, they realize they made the right decision, right? But that's the hard part is convincing them that we're the right company because they've been lied to before. They've had bad experiences with other companies. And we take it serious, like we have standards and we have expectations. And if the teammate isn't able to meet those or continues to have issues, you can't be a part of the team. And it's unfortunate we don't ever like to have to cut a teammate, but at the end of the day, we can't have somebody holding the whole team back. So we give them tons of opportunity to improve. We free ways to improve. We try. I go out of my way, and the rest of management goes out of their way. The rest of the team goes out of their way to try and help this person or these people. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's not meant to be. So um, that's where we're different. Whereas most companies they'll just stick that person on another site and forget about it, and the results continue. So, but yeah, it's the tough part is convincing those clients that they're making the right decision, and we try to really work with them as far as bill rates go and stuff like that. We understand security budget is usually pretty small, and what can we do to make the juice worth the squeeze for them?
Just goes right back to the values you instill, and it just correlates to the client's success. Yeah, I mean, naturally, people are hesitant. People may not have the budget for it, but when they see who you are, who your company is, then it just transitions into a whole different avenue. But as you mentioned, not a lot of people see the value in security until after the fact.
Yeah,
So we're security. We're security. Like, security should be here. But you were saying how we weren't doing anything 2 days ago. Now you're asking where everybody is.
yeah, yeah. You know, eh, we have clients who they want certain things. We always give advice, right? Like we give a full security threat risk assessment, and I don't want you to pay for anything that you don't need. Absolutely, like that doesn't benefit us. It doesn't benefit you. We're not going to just stick somebody in a place where they don't need to be, right? Or a camera or whatever the case may be. We're not going to charge you and put something in place that doesn't need to be there or it doesn't make sense. Um, so you know, we try to be extremely fair, and I understand that some things happen, budgets are out of certain people's control, but you know, for instance, we have a client who's bumping their hours down to just a few hours overnight. It's like, okay, well, nighttime is the best time to have us because of the incidents that happen there. But, there also is, a large portion of incidents that happen at the other hours. Um, and we try to work with them and give them a different strategy to where everything's covered. Like I said, they get the most bang for their buck. But security budgets are, with large corporations, they're pretty low, and again, it's just because they haven't had an incident yet. Once they have an incident where they could have really used security and there was no security there, then all of a sudden the budget goes up, right? um, we really try to explain that to them, and sometimes they get it, sometimes there's nothing we can do, and we make the best of it. We do the best we can with what they got to work with.
You're working with what you got, and
Exactly.
before people see the security expense as a burden until after the fact, after something happens, and that's not how it should be. Depending on the place,
Yeah.
security needs to be there. Security does need to be there. Now, I'm not too sure of your main driving clients, but I assume they they value and respect the budget, and they understand that this is a necessary cost. Once companies and organizations understand the necessary cost, then they won't budge, they won't fight, because 'cause they're like, "Okay, Dustin and his team are here. They make me good. They're gonna make sure everything is safe, everything's secured." And again, just going back to the company values you have, that's the biggest thing, biggest driver with everything.
Yeah, and we're big on transparency. Every incident report or every sort of any reporting whatsoever, they have total access to. Um, so we want them to see clearly what our team deals with at their site all the time, and then we also provide proof in numbers. We track analytics and we show them you paid this, but this is what we saved you by providing our service. And when they see those numbers, they're like, oh, okay, so um, that's a big thing too. And not only it benefits both of us. Like we're showing them what we're doing, but those analytics also show us, high crime times, when we should double up or when we should do site checks because that we see the most activity during that time. So we can show a little added presence to actually be the solution to that problem, right? We're not just there to collect a paycheck. We're not just there to put somebody in uniform and best of luck to you, bud, and leave, right? We're legitimately trying to solve their problems. Maybe it's not a great business strategy because one day we may solve all their problems and then they don't need us anymore. But to me, that's worth it. Then if we fix a problem, that's a win. That's success.
That is success. May not be in some other people's eyes, but in your eyes, that's all that matters. And I do really love that approach about the incident report and like what the cost saving is if you implement us. I personally don't know a lot of companies that do that, a lot of security companies, but that shows how much effort you truly go into to make sure they're satisfied in every way possible. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and we do that, each location has, like I said, we do a full assessment before we even sign a contract because I want to know what I'm getting our team into, and then I want them to know that we know what we're getting into, right? Um, for instance, we have a site where we ran a full assessment, and the highest crime in that area is property crime, so breaking into vehicles, vehicle burglaries. Okay. So now we watch, we go and we patrol the parking lots. We give extra attention to those areas, and that area, that crime rate goes down. We show them like, okay, so this is what it would have cost you if they stole this or whatever out of your car, or you know what I mean. We provide those analytics, but knowledge is power, and that's one thing we do different is we don't just rush into anything. We don't accept anything before we really understand the full scope of what we're getting into. Some of the sites, some of the locations, especially Denver, downtown Denver, and areas like that, the sites can be very challenging. High crime rates. You're dealing with, drug use, drug overdoses, actual crimes, stabbing, shootings, things like that. And you know, if you know beforehand you're getting yourself into that, you prepare and you find ways, you come up with a plan to be the solution to that problem. So, I think that's where a lot of companies are lacking is they just, yep, here's a contract, you sign it, I'll sign it. Here's a guard, do with him whatever you want. Whereas we have a whole plan, like this is your problem. All right, let's fix it. And I again, probably not a great business strategy, but I have clients who call and, hey, we got a problem with this. I'll go and I'll work a few hours for free just during those times because I want to catch this person in the act, right? We build really good rapport and relationships with the local law enforcement agencies who they know that they can call on us. We're going to be honest. We're going to show them just the facts. We document everything. We're great witnesses for them so they can actually do their job. And then again, the client just sees nothing but solutions. And we're working with law enforcement who they obviously can't afford to hire off-duty police officers because it's so expensive, but they're pretty much getting the same effect. They're, people are going to jail for committing crimes on their sites, and we're the ones stopping it and now preventing it from happening again. So, we really are it's a solution-based service. Like you come to me with a problem, and I'm going to use every tactic and brain cell I have to make sure that we find a solution for it. It may take some time, may take a lot of work, but it's a team effort. It's a group effort, and that's what makes us successful.
Mhm. As it should be. It should be a group effort for everything because it does make you successful. So looking ahead in the next year in 2026, what's the ultimate goal that you want to achieve for Tacon One?
I want to grow the team. I want to grow them strategically. Like I said, we have a lot of irons in the fire right now with growth. A lot more high risk stuff, bigger clients, bigger details, which are going to require people to move up. And, um, I'm looking forward to that. But, one thing is I'm trying to really chisel out a way to give myself to the team a little bit more. I'm extremely busy and, I want to find ways where I can spend a week with them on a training um, evolution or something to where we can get them all their certifications and a bunch of stuff that they don't have because I want to see them grow and I want their resumes and experience to grow too. So um, training is going to be a big one. We've got a lot of stuff. I'm releasing my book this week, so that'll be out there, and it kind of tells the story of where I came from and what led me to this. Hopefully that brings some attention and some work and some benefits to the teams. My goal is just to keep pushing, to keep growing the team, professionally and personally, and just get better and better. Like I said, we're happy where we're at. We got tons of clients. We're doing great on the books. Um, that's great and all, but the story's not over yet because I want to see this team grow to its full potential.
Story's never over. It's
Never.
never, ever over. That's the beauty of it, though. It's a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely.
So, with everything you've done career-wise, military, law enforcement, private security, and now CEO of a executive protection agency,
Mhm.
what's the most critical lesson you learned throughout that whole journey that really dials in on the business discipline and how you apply that to excel in the operations and the growth?
Excellent question. So, in my opinion, anyone can do what you and I are doing, right? Anybody can start a business. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money to file the paperwork, um, or at least where I'm at, it doesn't. And anybody has the skill set to go through and do what we do. There's plenty of people who started businesses from nothing like we did, right? Um, and I outline this in my book, but my business was started with a $50 gift card my mom gave me for my birthday. $50 is exactly how much the filing fee is in the state of Colorado to file the articles of incorporation for your business. Um, I started with nothing, and anybody's capable of doing that. But what makes you different is, understanding your mission and letting nothing stop you. That's what it comes down to is setting a goal and you're and finishing it. Set little goals along the way. Like it sounds cliche and it sounds silly, but in 5 years, I want to be here. What's it going to take me to do that? In all week, I have 10 to 15 goals per day, right? Um, anybody's capable of doing it. But the biggest piece of advice is I'm no good to my team if I don't take care of myself. And
Precisely.
I put that in my book too. There's, a lot in there about, I went through some serious struggles and I hit rock bottom and then picked myself up and charged forward to where I'm at now. So, but that failure, that collapse was because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was investing in everybody else and everything else, and I forgot to take care of myself. I ignored warning signs, got burned out, and I crashed. It happens to everybody if you don't take care of yourself, I promise. So, um, and I saw it through other guys who I looked up to, SWAT operators, SWAT commanders who were just the most badass people I've ever met in my life. And then you hear about like them going through a mental breakdown. And then a month later, they come back and they're a totally different person. And, that tells me that if you're functioning at a high level and operating at that high level for those high RPMs for as long as, I have, eventually, it's gonna catch up to you. Those miles will catch up to you. So, um, the biggest piece of advice is, yes, I work myself to death. I work 7 days a week. It's not uncommon for me to work 20 hours a day, but, like we talked about before this went live was, um, scheduling in those moments of taking care of yourself, or else you're gonna crash. You're not gonna make it. And again, if I'm no good and I'm not doing my part, my team will suffer and vice versa, right? So that's where, circling back to recognizing those warning signs and the burnout on your team, make sure you're checking in, make sure it's, business is hard and everything we do is hard. Anyone can do it with the right mindset, but you got to take care of yourself. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give because without you, your team fails and vice versa.
You nailed it perfectly. The sad thing is, going on my generation, they want to seek the rewards and the benefits, but they don't want to actually put in the effort, and that's the biggest thing anything in life. You can't nothing's gonna be laid out on a gold platter for you. You have to put in the work, you gotta put in the reps, you gotta put in the time and service to actually get from A to B, right? A to B might be a year, before you actually see results. But as long as you plug away every single day, do something a little better than the previous day, and those small little steps and habits do add up into something that will excel your business.
Every day is a school day, and the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement, man. So there's always something to learn and always something to improve on. You know, when we get client feedback and they're just like, "Oh, it was great. There was nothing. I couldn't see anything wrong with it." I'm like, "Ooh, well, I need you to dig a little deeper and find one thing wrong that we can improve on because that's what makes us better." And you're exactly right. I mean, if you show up every day, you perform, and you chip away little by little, everything adds up, and it all becomes successful in the end. Now I'm at the point where we're putting if you think about it this way, you're putting food on somebody's table. You're putting a roof over a family's head. That's a big responsibility. There's a lot of stuff out there. You're a business guy, you know this. There's tons of stuff out there, tons of videos and podcasts where they're like, "Oh, you can do this and just collect passive income and all this stuff." And it's like, in my opinion, there's no such thing as passive income because at some point you had to do some level of work to get there, right? Um, and then is that rewarding? I don't think so, man. Like I don't think passive income's rewarding at all. You got to put the work in so when you get the finished product, you can stand back and look at it and be like, "Yeah, we did that." That was all from our blood, sweat, and tears. Now let's reap the rewards. So there's a lot of false stuff out there saying like, "Oh, it's not even that hard," and you can just pop open a business and then all the money just starts flowing in, and that's not the case. You and I both know that it takes work, and your level of work and your level of commitment are going to dictate how successful you are. So, um, I would caution everybody listening or watching, be careful of the get rich quick scams because you got to put the work in, man. And to me, like I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I said, you put the work in, and you stand back and watch the finished product or the continuing product, and you should be happy knowing what you've done to get there.
If it doesn't work out, you still learn something.
100%.
You learn and you adapt and react. Like for you, for example, the first two businesses didn't work out in the beginning, but you understood why each and every time. And now look where you are now, attack on one.
Yeah.
Beautiful words coming. And it's going to only excel from there because you understood from past mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. You're always going to make mistakes. There's nothing in life that won't prepare you for making the mistake. But afterwards, after the fact, you're like, I shouldn't do that again. If you do it again, like, what are you doing? You didn't learn from that mistake.
There's a lot of people, like you said, who want to just open a business and their main goal is to make a ton of money. Well, of course, that's the end goal, right? You want to make money. But, why not build something that is going to outlive you, right? I want generational wealth, not in the sense of monetary value, money, right? Like I one day want to tell my son, like, this is yours now. You've had to work for it and, work your way up to it. But I want to be able to turn something over and it continue and watch, my son put his experiences and his little twist on everything or, my daughter be involved somehow. Um, my very first business was like that. I just wanted to make money. I wanted to do something that was quick. I could turn over and, make a ton of money. And guess what? It didn't work out. Whereas my second business was, hey, this is what I needed to do in order to do this type of work. And, it was successful because there was no other option. I had to make it work. And then, roll it into Tack on One now is it's not, I have to make it work for me. It's not about me at all. It's about the team. And I have to make it work for the team because the food on their table and the roofs over their heads and the school tuitions and everything else relies on it. And that's enough responsibility for me to keep driving and keep pushing and to make sure I'm successful. That failure is not an option at this point.
The biggest thing that some people have to understand is the biggest value. may not be the monetary value, but the connections you make on the way. By far the absolute best value. Sure, money, the monetary value is a byproduct, but if it's not for the connections at the end of the day, the people that you interact with, the mentors that you seek, you're not gonna grow
Yeah.
and expand.
Yeah, I had a phone call today, about a 2-hour long phone call with the owner of another security company right here in Colorado, a competitors, so to speak. We were just catching up, like we had done some stuff together, and um, we had some contractors who work for them and they work for me. And we had a 2-hour long conversation, and to me it's like we don't have competitors. We're not in that realm. There's plenty of security companies out here, tons of them, plenty of options, but we don't have competitors because we do something special, and the clients that word travels quick, and the clients talk to one another, and we've picked up a lot of clients just based on, hey, you did security over at this event for a friend of mine, and we heard nothing but glowing reviews. So, uh, can you do that for us? And that's where a lot of it comes from. But yeah, it's the networking and the connections are very important. Even if you think it's a nobody, give them a chance. You never know who they know, or these podcasts, like, you never know who's going to see these, right? you know, One of my clients may see you on this podcast, and reach out to you for some services, some business, right? You're absolutely right. Like, connections and networking is very, very important in business. Building those friendships, those partnerships is important. And you know who the real deal is, and you know who the real businessman is when you have those meetings. I had a meeting the last week for a company that wanted to join in a partnership with us. I don't think they expected me to run the numbers and do my due diligence right there on the call with them. So, they were offering me certain things and telling me how it was going to benefit me. Well, I started running the numbers, and then it was all right, so to join this partnership, you got to pay me X amount of dollars so I can give you a bag and list you as a partner and on the paperwork and all this stuff. And I stopped him right there, and I was just like, no, that's one, I'm not going to pay you to help sell your product, and two, I'm not going to enter into any partnership where it starts off with pay me to enter a partnership with me. Um, a business relationship should be beneficial for both parties, right? I would never say, "Hey, Kevin, come partner with us. Let's link our companies together." But in order to do that, you got to pay me money. That's just not going to build a good business relationship or relationship in general. You don't start off that way. So, um, they were upset. I sent a follow up email, and it was just, I thanked them for their time and told them, hey, no hard feelings or anything, but I think that's a bad way to start a relationship. And if you wanted to see past that and reconsider, then reach back out. And the VP of that company reached out and called me rude and all this other stuff, and I was just like, I don't think it's rude for me to make a smart business decision. And, that's where I was just like, obviously this conversation isn't going to benefit me. So I just ended it. So, um, we just don't do business that way. Like, people who want to partner with us, absolutely. I want to hear you out. I want to see how we can, grow something together or do a joint venture together in some way. But it's got to be beneficial for both of us. And I'm not going to treat you poorly. I'm not going to tell you that you need to pay me money to do that. So, you know, make smart businesses decisions. Don't jump on everything that comes your way. To like really read into it, run the numbers, and make sure it's going to benefit you, because that deal was not going to benefit me whatsoever. So, not good for the team.
Essentially, it should be a win-win in both your books. I'm sorry that happened to you, but
Hey, it happens.
It does happen, it is the business, but that goes to show that they value the monetary value over the connection, the
Yeah.
relationship they'll build off that, and it's just there are nasty people in that world that just frankly don't care. Again, going
Yeah.
back to big companies, they look at their workers as just a number, not an actual person, and that's not what you do, not the value that you instill in yourself and the company.
No, and it's it's unfortunate because I had some clients who could really benefit from what they were offering. But the price point and the way that they had structured it just didn't make any sense. And they just kept harping on revenue, reoccurring revenue, and this, that, and well, yeah, but what does it do for us as a company or our team, and what does it do for the client? I'm not I'm not going to sell my soul to the devil for money, and that's just I think that's kept me out of some pretty bad business deals already. So I'm thankful for that mindset, but you know, uh, you got to watch out for people like that. They're especially a company on the rise. People are going to try and take advantage of you.
It's a smart mindset to have. Before we wrap up here, what's the best place for people who are listening or watching this to reach out to you and Tacon One?
So LinkedIn is a big one. We monitor that pretty close. We have somebody who monitors like all the other social media and stuff, so it will eventually make its way to us. But if you guys want to follow us on LinkedIn and come see us on LinkedIn, message us. Um, Definitely, come find us. And then we have a website, www.taconone.com. That'll take you to the email and phone number as well to reach out to us and get in touch. My book it's my story, but it's also, for anybody who's going through any struggles. It's for business people who, want a little motivation, or military or law enforcement guys who hopefully don't make the same mistakes I made. But I think there's going to be a lot of value in the book. I never, ever, ever thought that I would write a book because I'm just not a big reader, other than books that I have to read. Um, but so many people were just like, dude, you got to write a book. You got to tell your story. People have to know. So that's what I did. And it took me a really long time, but I think it's gonna be great, man, and I'm really excited for other people to hopefully find some value in those pages. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's awesome. I'm excited for you. Truly,
Thanks,
truly.
man.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the podcast. Again, it was truly an honor to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me, and I support everything you're doing, and if you need anything from me, I'm always here for you. So just let me know. Of
Thank you. I do appreciate that, Dustin.
course, man.